failing in his most sacred duty to protect the safety and welfare of its citizens. Nigeria's president comes under fire after a discredited truce with Boko Haram. Are peace talks still possible? Or is military intervention inevitable? This is Inside Story. Hello, good to see you. Welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. It was being described as a breakthrough, a ceasefire agreed between Nigeria's government and Boko Haram, a deal that could also lead to the release of more than 200 schoolgirls abducted by the armed group back in April. Both prospects have since been discredited, with Boko Haram making a flat denial in a video released online.
I'm telling you, we have not agreed a ceasefire with anyone. We long for further battle. This is what we believe in and fight for. Our goal is to see only the Quran being followed on earth. This is our focus.
The group also said the abducted schoolgirls had converted to Islam.
To the mothers of the Chibok schoolgirls, I say, if you could see the condition of your daughters today, it would lead some of you to convert to Islam and some of you to die from grief. All the more than 200 schoolgirls have converted to Islam. The schoolgirls have confessed that Islam is the true religion. They've been married and they are in their marital homes.
It's putting more pressure on President Goodluck Jonathan because of his inability to rein in Boko Haram fighters. Nigeria's opposition, the All Progressive Congress Party, has accused Jonathan's government of misleading the public over the reported peace deal. A statement read, "The president has failed in his most sacred duty, protecting the safety and well-being of Nigeria's citizens." So what can Goodluck Jonathan do to restore faith among Nigerians? And is talking to Boko Haram still an option? Let's get the thoughts of our guests now. In London, Mahmoud Kamara, Nigeria researcher for Amnesty International. And joining us from Abuja, we have Mike Ejiofor, former director of Nigeria's State Security Service. And completing our panel in Birmingham is Aliyu Musa, an independent researcher on war and conflict and a specialist on Boko Haram. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on Inside Story. Mike, this has been seen as deeply embarrassing for the president. What happened?
I wouldn't say it's embarrassing, but the fact remains that the government is looking at every option towards resolving this crisis. And that is why government left its door open to negotiation. You also recall that Boko Haram has many factions, and the person who entered into negotiation with government has substantial followership of the Boko Haram. So there's nothing to lose hope about, or to say that government is embarrassed because a faction of Boko Haram is actually discussing with government and the negotiations are ongoing.
You say the government, sorry, excuse me, jumping in here, you say the government is looking at all options, but is that including talking to somebody who doesn't exist? Nigeria is famous for its scams. Was he scammed?
No, it wasn't a scam. That's what I'm saying, that the person in question has a large followership. You recall that Boko Haram has a lot of cells and factions. You have the Ansaru, even within the mainstream Boko Haram led by Shakau, they are now factionalized, and government will be looking at every of the groups to see how the matter can be resolved. I think that's why the government went into negotiation. Don't forget also that the Chadian president is involved in this negotiation, which gives it the international dimension.
Aliyu, what do you make of that? Do you think it's the fact that Goodluck Jonathan was just negotiating with just one faction of Boko Haram, or has he been duped? And if so, how come?
Well, what I think actually is that the government in Nigeria has been negotiating with the wrong set of people. The people that have been negotiating with are not actually a faction of Boko Haram, but fraudsters. The fact is, although it may appear that Boko Haram has got a number of factions, that is not the actual case. The case is all of these factions you mentioned, my colleague in Abuja mentioned, like Ansaru, are all answerable to Abubakar Shekau. If they have been discussing with any of the groups that has been answerable to Abubakar Shekau, definitely would have achieved something. But the fact is they have been discussing with the wrong set of people. Like
if they've been discussing with the wrong set of people, why do they say that they've been discussing this with Boko Haram and therefore they've agreed a ceasefire? Surely that's disingenuous and dishonest.
Yeah, I think it's completely dishonest, given the fact that the government should have been aware that there are people who have got direct links with this group, especially Abubakar Shekau, and these people have been in touch with the government. I remember there was a time Ahmed Salkida, a journalist who has got links with the direct link to Abubakar Shekau, came down all the way to Nigeria from Dubai, where he lives, where he resides, to negotiate the release of the girls. But he said he was frustrated by people within the government, people who thought his being there was a sort of rivalry to them because they have one thing or the other to gain from the government. And by him being the main man or the go-between, he was stopping them from getting whatever they wanted to get. Okay. So what I feel is the government has been duped by a group that claims to be speaking on behalf of Boko Haram.
Mahmoud Kamara, with your workings on the ground, what do you think went wrong here? And what do you think the government motivation was? Because I mean, apart from the fact that there was no ceasefire, this must be deeply disturbing to those families of those girls who are still missing.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think it's been very concerning. It's been very depressing for the number of people in Nigeria, the parents of those children that are still being abducted by Boko Haram. We think that this is just an example of the lack of sincerity and the lack of genuine political will on the part of the Nigerian government to ensure that the girls are reunited with their families, but also that the situation in the north is brought under control and law and order is restored. You should also remember that this is not the first time that the Nigerian government has misinformed the Nigerian public about the situation of the girls. When the girls were abducted at the initial stage, there was a statement from the defense headquarters saying that most of the girls have been rescued and that just a few of them, about 8 of them, are still missing. They were forced to retract that statement and then apologize. Again, it shows the disconnection between those in Abuja, the political elite in Abuja, and the ordinary people in the north of Nigeria who are suffering on a daily basis the atrocities that have been perpetrated, not just by Boko Haram, but also by the Nigerian security forces who are supposed to be protecting them.
And you also wonder what sort of political gains are made because of this, because many outside of his camp are saying that he used this information to boost his chances for the elections in February. Is that true?
Well, we haven't, as an organization, we haven't done any research into the intention or the political intention of this declaration. But we think that because elections are coming in February next year in Nigeria, there are a lot of efforts by different political factions to score points. And we, as an organization, we will not go into the intentions of politicians or individuals in this situation. We only will raise our concern that the lives of Nigerians are at risk and that the right to life in Nigeria should not be muddled or should not be politicized, and every Nigerian, regardless of where they are, their right to life must be protected under all circumstances.
And all the while, of course, Boko Haram is just snapping up ground in Nigeria. They've been raising the black and white flag of Al-Qaeda across a large part of the country, bordering Cameroon. Much of the north is now under Boko Haram control and Islamic law. These are the towns captured by the armed group, while several others are still being defended by the military. Other attacks are being blamed on Boko Haram, many of them after the so-called ceasefire. Lokoja in central Kogi state on Sunday, gunmen attacked a prison thought to hold many suspected Boko Haram fighters. More than 140 inmates are reported to have been freed. In Potiskum, in Yobe State, on Monday, a suicide bomber killed at least 30 people, marking the sheer holy day of Ashura. More than 100 others were injured. And Mubi in Adamawa State is now under the control of Boko Haram. Military commanders are reported to have abandoned their posts as fighters stormed the town. More than 10,000 people have been forced to leave for camps in the state capital of Yola. Mike, let me just raise one of the many issues raised by that graphic, is the fact that the Nigerian military leaves their arms behind and run away. What's the problem there?
Well, I must start by making a contribution to correct some impressions. This negotiation that was announced by the federal government is the first of its kind. I agree that there are some scouts, people, fraudsters, who front as leaders or members of Boko Haram. But government has not in any circumstance come out to inform Nigerians that they are negotiating with Boko Haram until this recent one. Other ones, we've had 3 or 4 occasions where some people who claim to be members of Boko Haram have come out to say that they are negotiating on behalf of Boko Haram. That is not entirely correct. So I want that one corrected.
Well, it seems that the government needs to keep a lid on who is handing out the information, shouldn't they?
No, the point I'm making is that government shouldn't have come out to make a statement that they were negotiating if the sources they are using have not been vetted and screened to determine the authenticity of their claims. And that is why government went ahead to assure Nigerians that it was doing something, the government was doing something to ensure that these people are freed and law and order is retained.
Okay, just very quickly, please bring us in. I'm going to bring in Aliyu to talk more about what can be done as far as negotiations are concerned. But the fact that the military is dumping weapons and running away in the face of Boko Haram, why is that happening?
I think that's a media creation. Because it's a media creation. Because the Nigerian military, if you recall, that before the announcement of the ceasefire and negotiation, the military was actually taking on Boko Haram both aerially and on the ground. But now that possibly the Boko Haram members use this as a deception to buy time, it is now left for government to actually intensify its efforts in bringing these hoodlums to their knees.
Okay, Aliyu, I will come to you as I promised, but Mark, let me just pick up a point there about attacking Boko Haram fighters. I mean, you hear this coming from the government, you hear about airstrikes, and yet where are the victims?
Exactly. We all the time we hear about Nigerian security forces killing so and so amount of people. But from our research on the ground, we have interviewed hundreds of people on various occasions in Nigeria. And we've traveled to Borno State and we have interviewed victims, eyewitnesses, relatives of victims who have told us that in many cases, many of these people that the Nigerian security forces claim to be Boko Haram members or fighters are actually civilians, ordinary civilians who are caught in crossfire. Many times, in fact, the Boko Haram fighters will have come to a village, they attack and ransack a village, and then leave, and then later on the Nigerian army will come and just open fire and kill whoever, especially young men and boys who may be in the town, and they will either be arrested or killed, or arrested and they die in detention. We have documented a number of cases of people dying in Nigerian military custody. We have also documented a number of people extrajudicially executed. We issued several reports. We've issued a report recently about the number of people who have been tortured in Nigerian security detention facilities. So we know that there are a series of concerns that have been raised within Nigeria by Nigerians and outside Nigeria about the handling of the situation by the Nigerian security forces. There are a series of problems. There are several flaws. We have raised those concerns repeatedly with senior Nigerian military officials as well as Nigerian government officials about the handling of the situation in the Northeast. But nothing seems to be happening. A lot of the time we get commitments about investigations, and most of the time either the investigations are not conducted, or when they are conducted, the findings of those investigations are not made public, and the recommendations are not acted upon. And the ordinary civilians, the ordinary Nigerians who don't have any acts, any connection to Boko Haram or any of the fighting factions are the ones who are suffering the most. And that's why, as an organization, Amnesty International is urging the Nigerian government to ensure that, first, they're sincere, that they are open and accountable to the Nigerian public, and they respect human rights under all circumstances.
And as well, Aliyu, possibly a change of tactic. The status quo needs to change. What about, and there's a lot of talk of this right now, military intervention? Is that the way forward now?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. First of all, whether the military are themselves motivated enough to be able to fight Boko Haram. You see, from what we've been seeing in recent times, it appears the military are so demotivated that they are running away from a common ragtag army of Boko Haram. I mean, like you just mentioned a few minutes ago, places like Mobi have fallen into the hands of these insurgents, and they have raised their flags proclaiming a caliphate in about 3 states of Nigeria. So what in effect it means is that the government of Nigeria is no longer in control of certain parts of the country. Now, for a military intervention to be effective in this sense, it means the military have to be motivated. Soldiers have complained that they haven't got enough equipment to fight, they haven't got enough welfare to fight, they haven't got enough motivation to fight, and that is why even 5 commanders abandoned Mubi a few days ago and ran away, allowing the insurgents to just walk in there and take over everything.
International experts flooding into the country. I mean, some months after the girls were abducted. You remember that sort of breathless reporting about the foreign teams of experts raising expectations of a speedy resolution. We saw Britain, the US, France, China and Israel all sending officials in there. It hasn't made any difference. What happened?
It hasn't made any difference because the Nigerian government is not willing to assist them. It all depends on the intention of the Nigerian government, on the willingness of the Nigerian government to support them. They can't go there and perform magic. They can't just go there and wave a magic wand and say, oh, let all the guests come back and they'll go home, and let all the insurgents go away, and then insurgency that will be the end of the insurgency. It means the Nigerian government needs to support them fully in every sense. But where that support is not coming, then it's not going to work. And that is why today Boko Haram is having the upper hand over the Nigerian military. You can imagine the military of the standing of Nigerian military that has been participating in peacekeeping operations all over the world today are being trounced again and again by Boko Haram. So it means that the tactic has to change. And I'm a student of collaborative problem-solving approach. What it means is, for a problem to be solved, this kind of problem, it means there has to be some collaboration, but with whom?
Okay, let's bring in Mike there. Mike, are we likely to see some sort of military intervention, or are talks still possible? And if you do talk to Boko Haram, what is it that they want, and what can you put on the table?
I think we're standing truth on this head. It is the Boko Haram that is committing crime against humanity. And that should be noted. The government, the military forces of Nigeria observe the best practices. Like he has said there.
No, that's with respect. Human Rights Watch also accuses the Nigerian government of committing abuses against many of those in the northern states.
Again, but that does not also justify the action of the Boko Haram, who have been slaughtering and killing innocent citizens in the name of Islamizing or introducing Sharia law in that part of the country. Just like going straight to what we have just said, I think fighting our way through only military option will not be a solution to the crisis. You leave every option open, negotiate with genuine and credible sources of the Boko Haram, if they are ready to negotiate.
What could you give them? What is it that they want?
That's the problem. It becomes a very big problem because nobody knows exactly what they want, that to Islamize Nigeria. Of course, you know Nigeria is a secular state. It's not possible. So that brings a problem, and a major one, that government will now tactfully handle the situation, because Nigerians are involved, who have our own domestic political crisis, which is associated with this. We have the ideological part of it, and it's multifaceted, that it's difficult for the government to take a decisive action. And by the time the military goes ahead to carry out raids, it's the same international community and civil society organizations that will accuse the military of human rights abuses. And Human Rights Watch is there. And so I beg to disagree that the Nigerian military forces are the people perpetrating crimes. Rather,
okay, Mike, I'm going to interrupt you
there.
there, if I may, and bring in Mahmed. Mike was raising the political crisis, the military crisis. How concerned are you about the upcoming elections in February, and can you gauge what's likely to happen after the violence that we saw in the last elections?
Well, I think anybody who has been monitoring elections in Nigeria will be and should be very concerned in terms of the conduct of the elections. We have seen a number of cases already where people have been kidnapped, political opponents have been arrested unlawfully and detained unlawfully. We have seen a number of cases where people are even questioning whether elections will go ahead in certain areas. For example, the places that Boko Haram now controls, Goza, Mubi, Kunduga, and all those places, those remote areas in the northeast of Nigeria. We are concerned about whether elections will we hold in those places. And these are Nigerians. These are not foreigners. These are Nigerians, and who may be disenfranchised and whose rights to vote or be voted for will be deprived. They will be deprived of that right if the Nigerian government, which has a national as well as international obligation to ensure that every part of Nigeria is safe and secure for these kinds of activities, is not taking the necessary steps or measures.
Okay, let me bring in Mike.
To ensure that.
Mike, relatively briefly, if you will, I mean, how concerned are the security forces about the events leading up to the elections and the elections themselves?
Well, the security forces are very concerned, and I think they're doing their best. As for the election that's upcoming, of course, we should not shy away from it because we expect some crisis. If the situation is not stabilized before the election, of course, those people might be disenfranchised. But again, that is the responsibility of INEC in collaboration with various security forces to determine whether the people, like my colleague there said, if you don't stabilize the polity for now, those people will be disenfranchised, and that will make the election almost incredible because people who are supposed to vote have the right to vote, and we need to have a credible election. So the security forces must be up in their games now to ensure that peace is restored. I think what caused this little diversion was the offer made by the insurgents of a negotiation. But I think it is the primary responsibility of government to ensure the safety and welfare of the people, and government will continue to intensify the efforts without looking at the people being being slaughtered, innocent people being slaughtered by insurgents in the name of religion or promoting a war.
Okay. Aliyu, what sort of damage does this do to Nigeria's reputation? I mean, you tend to forget that it is the continent's most successful economy, one of the largest oil producers. There's so much happening in the country that the country can be proud of.
Well, the fact is that the way the government has been handling the crisis, immense damage has been done to the reputation of the country in all parts of the world. For instance, today, as soon as you are talking about Nigeria, you hear all these things about the kidnappings, the bombings, the attacks on people, and so on. And even the girls, the issue of the kidnap. It's something the government should have resolved long ago, but because the government is unwilling, the government has not done anything about it. And this has brought the reputation, this has destroyed the reputation of the Nigerian government and, of course, of Nigeria itself. Because if the government had been willing to do something, they would have done something to bring back this case. But it is clear the government is more interested in politics. It is clear the government is more interested in 2015 elections. It is clear the president is thinking about coming back, being re-elected, than in resolving that problem. And that is why the military have not been motivated. And that is why the government is not willing and has not done anything to negotiate with the right people. Talking to the wrong people is very clear. The government has been talking to the wrong people. And if they had wanted, they would have talked to the right people. So it all depends on whether the government would want to do the right thing now by getting the right people to talk to them or not, and then focusing more on the presidency election bid.
Okay, and what a pity, considering how much the country does have to celebrate. Gentlemen, thank you so much for talking to us on Inside Story. My guests, Mahmoud Kamara in London, Mike Ejiofor in Abuja, and Aliyu Musa in Birmingham. And do please feel free to add your voice to this discussion. You can leave your comments at facebook.com/ AJ Inside Story. We also, on Twitter, look for @AJ Inside Story and @Jane Dutton. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.